Well, Andy, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast.
Great to be here. Thanks for the invitation. Really appreciate that.
I wanted to start off by having you share a little bit about Alliance history and really how inclusivity became central to the university's identity.
Sure. So Alliant is kind of a play on words. It's a term for alliance of schools. And so about 22 years ago, the last major merger that took place was between USIU, United States International University, and the California School of Professional Psychology became Alliant University System. But yet, 80 years before that, there was another major merger. It was California Western University, Balboa College, one other, and they formed USIU eventually in the 1950s or 1960s. The headquarters and main campus is in San Diego. We still sit on the original 100 or so acres in Scripps Ranch up in San Diego. We have 7 total campuses, physical campuses in Arizona and California, but this is our headquarters in San Diego. So I don't know if it was intentional because that was 85, 90 years ago when these mergers started happening for the system to take place. But something funny happened along the way. And it might be coincidence or maybe it was intentional. But every single school had a DNA and a culture of inclusivity, meaning we found articles from the San Francisco newspaper in the 1920s that talked about Alliance predecessor schools graduating the first 2 women with a JD degree, a law degree. And that was unheard of in the 1920s. I know today you'd go, well, that's not news. Of course not. But in the 1920s, it was 19 teens. And so we were breaking glass ceilings back then. In the 1970s, being gay was still considered a psychological disorder by the APA. And I know I talked to some of our faculty that were with the California School of Professional Psychology back in the late 60s. It was founded in 69 and early 70s. And they were talking about how the school would fight the reputation of APA on that issue, and making it so it's not a psychological disorder. It's not, you can't have counseling to cure being gay. And I think our faculty knew that back in the 70s. And that eventually got changed, obviously. And so we have this history of really breaking glass ceilings about being inclusive. By the way, done at a time before it was the in thing to do. It's always been the right thing to do, but it's not always been the in thing to do. Over the last 5 years specifically, I think almost every corporation and every organization has kind of latched onto that. Maybe that's waning a little bit this year, but overall, it's still a lot further than we were 5 years ago. But Alliant and our predecessor schools have done that for over 100 years. And I think that's what makes our culture very special.
I know that when we spoke a couple months ago, when we were first getting to know each other, you told me a little bit about even the values that the university has really shape the way that you act, the decisions that are made, the culture that's on your campus. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about those impact values and what they mean to the university.
Absolutely. So I think the best way to develop values, and I've been CEO at 2 different organizations and more on the executive side for the last 20 years or so at a couple others. And when values are top down delivered, they tend not to stick. And so my dissertation research is actually in developing cultures with aligned employee values. That's part of my research background. And so it's big for me, but it's also big for everyone. We always like to be aligned to the values of our organization. And typically when people feel they don't belong anymore, they can say, oh, it's my boss. They can say it's the job. But a lot of times it's you don't feel aligned with the values of the organization you work with or work for. And so I think it's really important you codify those, you define those, but it's also very important you don't do it from the top down. It's not a leadership responsibility or a board responsibility. It's an organizational responsibility. So what we did about 10 years ago is we asked 20 faculty and staff through our faculty and senate and our staff council, the elected representatives of both bodies. We said, hey, can you tell us which 20 people at the university should be on this team to figure out what our values are? Because one of the things I saw when I first came into the organization was there were some all caps emails, there were some not so nice words spoken in meetings, and I thought, okay, we've got behaviors that have no alignment with a codified value system about how we treat each other, how we should respect one another, how we act. And if you really codify your values, but they're realistic and authentic to your organization, it gives you the guide rails and foundation on how to behave, how I treat you, how do I communicate to you, what's the expectation or service level agreement from you back to me and vice versa. We didn't have any of that. And you could tell that, you could feel it. And so there's two types of values. There are aspirational values. These are things that we're not doing yet. We're not behaving this way yet, but we need to, we want to. There's also foundational values. We're doing this already in pockets or maybe substantially through the organization, and we want to continue doing more of that. So I asked the team to choose the 20 people. It was 20 faculty and staff. We gave them a budget, gave them a consultant that does this work that does not work for Alliant. We said, the leadership team is not going to be a part of that. You all are going to tell us, the leadership team and the board, what our values are. And they could be aspirational or foundational or both. But it's got to come from you and work you do through your colleagues at your campuses and even online. And they came back to us and said, we've chosen 6, 3 are aspirational and 3 are foundational. And we want to call them the impact values. They codified it with an acronym, which is great because then people remember it.
Right.
We're very proud of the fact that our values are not some hollow statement hung at the front door that gathers dust. We talk about the impact values constantly in our 4 times a year all hands on meeting. We actually reward people for demonstrating values, their behaviors. We give out awards for it, prizes for it. It's talked about a lot. You always know when the values have taken hold when you hear hallway conversations that are not leadership team members necessarily, but someone will say, hey, I felt when you sent me the email, it violated the C value. And here's that. Oh my God. So you can always tell when they're taking effect because they actually, police is not a right word, but they tell each other about how they felt about a certain value. We also put them into our job descriptions and also put them into our assessments every year for job performance, because it's not just about what we do and what the outcomes are, it's about how we did it. Are we ethical? Are we respectful? And the impact values are 6 different values, but they really are centered around ethics and respect. And we feel that because the values were produced by faculty and staff, they took hold more effectively.
And I love the example of how you continue to live the values. I know when I worked out of college, we got dinged by the accrediting commission for a whole list of things, and one of them was that nobody knew what the values were.
Yeah.
So as the marketing director, my job was to laminate the values. I like laminated and posted them around
It's a good
campus.
start. Yeah. That's a good start.
But they were so
Exactly.
cumbersome and difficult
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
relate to. Nobody really latched onto them. They weren't part of our culture.
That's most organizations in my experience. And that's why I really chose that research work for my own dissertation is how do you really have those have an impact
Right.
and how do they take effect? And if you ask 10 Alliant employees, all 10 would know what the impact values are. They could quote them. That's how much we talk about it.
Well, that's wonderful. And it's such a great recruitment tool as well. I'm sure people look at Alliant, look at working there, and can the values resonate with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're not perfect. We don't nail it every time. I don't nail it every time. But I think what's important is when you maybe break a value, and I have done it. But I recognize it, I apologize for it, and I move on, and you do that repair, and we become better from it. So, I'm not here to paint a picture saying, hey, we have the best culture in the world, and we are just perfect at our value, because we are not. I am not. But that's human, and you embrace that. You embrace imperfections, but more importantly, you get better from it with the self-realization is perfection is not possible, but we will get better at it.
Right. Right. It's part of the journey, right? We're
It
on a
is.
journey.
Yeah.
We're not we never hit the end destination, especially
No,
in
you never get
education,
there. We
right?
try, but you never quite get there. That's okay. That's okay.
And I mean, you have a really interesting personal journey that's informed your leadership style and really, I think, aligns well with your role at Alliance. So if you don't mind, share a little bit about your background and how
Yeah.
you found kind of a home where you are right now.
Yeah, it really aligns to the original question we started the podcast with is the DNA of Alliant and inclusivity. So I grew up in a very small town in Nebraska, well, third largest city in the state with 20,000 people. So back there, it's a
Wow.
big city. And I had a great family and upbringing, great town to grow up in, had a great childhood. Although, as some young men and women and others see at a certain age, you go, I'm not like the others. And uh, I knew that at a fairly early age. And I was born in 69, so my childhood is in the 70s and 80s. Not a particularly great time to come out of the closet as a gay man. And certainly even worse for people older than me trying to come out in the 40s, 50s, 60s, almost unheard of at that time, especially. It was actually could get you into jail in some situations. But in the 80s and 90s, you had a lot of things coming at you. You had generally, I think it was less than 20% of the country thought being gay was okay. You certainly had no support for gay relationships or gay marriages. That was, forbidden. And being in a small town in Nebraska was even a tougher place. It was a different time and place to try to come out. And I thought about coming out right after high school in '87 in college. And Lincoln is a college town. I went to the University of Nebraska. Lincoln's a college town. It's more accepting, but still in 1987, this wasn't the right time or place to do that. It could impact you mentally, certainly. It could impact you physically. In that time, in about late '80s, there was a man killed just for being gay, coming out of a gay bar in Lincoln. They found his body in the bottom of the lake. Just very, very troublesome times at that time. Matthew Shepard was about that same time, one state over in Wyoming. There's a lot going on. And I just decided, well, I'll figure it out, but I'll just kind of not come out right now. Well, flash forward to 1993 or so, and I was about 23, 24, and I had met uh, someone and fell in love. And I thought, I gotta, my dad had passed by then. I gotta tell my mom. I'm so close to my mom. And my mom, very progressive. I knew she'd be okay with it, which is rare for that time, by the way, because most of my gay friends were disowned, kicked out of the house.
Mm.
Some of them lost their job just for being gay. This is back in the '80s and '90s. Again, different time, different place. And so it was pretty brutal. And so you have that hanging over you. And when I told my mom, it was a really tough day. I went to the house I grew up in, sat across the breakfast table. For 18 years, I had breakfast at this table. And I'm trying to tell her and I couldn't. And she finally goes, what's going on with you? And and now I'm crying. And I said, well, Mom, I'm here to tell you something. I am dating someone. His name is Eric, and Mom, I'm gay. And I'm crying. She comes around the table, and I'm now bawling. And she gives me a really tight hug, and she goes, this is actually great news. And I said, wait, what do you mean? She goes, well, you're the baby of the family. You're my son, and I never wanted to compete against the love of another woman. A guy I can totally handle.
As a mom to two boys, I'm
I
feeling your
know,
mom right now.
yeah. So would you believe, about 2 weeks later, I go back to the house I grew up in, and she has a picture of the dog my partner and I had on the same wall as the other grandkids. She goes, I tell everyone that's my grand dog. So she had integrated us right away and just made it a wonderful experience. Although she said this, she said, I'm actually a little concerned. She goes, I'm fine. Her friends weren't so fine, by the way, but she didn't care about that. But she said, I'm concerned about your professional success because, again, this is the early '90s and you could lose your job for being gay. You could be fired for it. There was no protection about that at all. And she said, of my kids, I know you are super career driven and I'm concerned. I said, I am too. And so flash forward about 30 years later, when I'm interviewing for this job 10 years ago, and I found a place that, not only could I not have to be in the closet, but they leaned in. They wanted to know more about that part of me. because at Alliant, for 100 years plus, we believe that our differences make us stronger. And we embrace that. We want all kinds of different people and backgrounds and personalities to come together, because I think we're better from that. We're stronger from that. Different viewpoints is always a great thing. And for the first, I remember sitting in that interview, when you interview for a presidential job at a college, you go through about a month of interviews, committees and students and faculty and staff. And every single time they said, hey, tell us about your partner and tell us about how you came out of the class. They wanted to know more about that. And I thought, wow, how far we've come. Because when I was 23 and came out of the closet, one, I never thought in a million years we'd have gay marriage in my life. I thought I'd be in the closet forever professionally. I really did. I just thought, well, it's not going to happen in my lifetime, and I'll just kind of do my thing and figure it out. But I think when you're in the closet at work, I think the challenge is you are not your authentic self, and it shows up in other ways. It manifests. People feel something's kind of off about somebody. It's not that being a gay defines me professionally. It does not. What I'm saying is when you're hiding a piece of your life, I think professionally people think there's something quite off about someone, in my experience at least. And so I think going from being 23, scared to death to come out of the closet, thinking it's going to ruin my professional career, to finding Alliant where it's embraced was just so special for me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, 100%. It's such a fantastic personal story, and thank you for sharing it with us. And I think that institutions that allow people to bring their full authentic self are more successful,
Yeah,
and they're
they are.
places where people want to be.
Yeah, totally agree. It is a part of our culture, and I agree.
I was told by a former employer to never bring my personal life to work.
Yeah.
And it was, I was giving some communication advice as a parent because we were dealing with a situation that involved children on campus. And it just like floored me because I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not two people. I'm not like,
No, no, we're not.
worker Cheryl and mom Cheryl, and
Right,
it's not
right.
severance. It's you're come as a
Yeah,
whole person, and having a place that embraces that, puts that in their values, is somewhere people would want to work.
I agree with you because look, we all have bad days or bad events happen in our life, and it doesn't mean you get to phone it in or don't not show up for work. That's not what
Right.
we're saying. But my gosh, when I have someone that's on my team that I know is going through a rough time, you shift your style of communication. Maybe it depends on the personality you're working with, but you show empathy. And empathy used to be maybe people would think it's weak. It's not. It's actually strength.
Yeah.
And it empowers people, because if you work for someone that you know truly cares, and not cares from here, but from here, the heart, it makes you want to stay. It actually increases employee retention.
And I imagine not just what you see like on your campus with your faculty and staff and administrators you hire, but also amongst your students. I mean, nationally, I think it's around 80% of students are suffering from high
Mhm.
stress, moderate or high stress. A lot of them are depressed. And I see this in the clients that we work with, is there are a lot of mental health challenges on college campuses. And I think it's a crisis we can't ignore. Um, I see you probably, I mean, Alliant specializes in this. So what are you seeing out there? How are students getting on right now?
Same as you described. Now, we have a built-in advantage. So Alliance California School of Professional Psychology is the largest provider of licensed clinical psychologists in the entire United States. About 10 to 12% come from CSPP at Alliant. In California, almost 40% of licensed psychologists are from our school. So we are a substantial player in mental health licensure programs. So we have a built-in advantage in some aspects, in that it's what we do. It's what we train. Our faculty are typically licensed psychologists, therapists, counselors themselves. We also have social work and marriage family therapy and clinical counseling. So we have a lot of faculty on staff, and even some staff themselves that are licensed in therapy and mental health. So what we see is there's a few different stressors right now for today's student. One is the cost of everything, whether it's tuition or rent or car payments or insurance. That's a big stressor. That impacts mental health. Two, we see just time. Uh, Everything takes more time, even with technology enhancements. We have very little time to do self-care, especially when you're a student and maybe working full-time or part-time. And there's really no time. Your brain needs time to have nothing to do, to think, to strategize about your own life. And that's hard for a lot of students today. And number three, there's just human relationships can be stressful sometimes, whether it's romantic or friendship or family. You've got all these demands on top of you. So we're saying the same thing. I think mental health also used to not be seen as intertwined with physical health. And we know today with research that the two are completely wound up together. And one impacts the other, whether it's mental or physical. We know that today. Matter of fact, we see a lot of hospitals today hiring our graduates so they have mental health professionals in the physical care hospitals because they know it's very important for mental health to impact physical health. So you are right. I think students today are under more stress than any student before. Just take one little, I've seen a graphic recently that's verified where, when I bought my first house, I could afford to buy a house, making no money, by the way, at 23, 24 years old, and didn't have help from mom and dad on that one either. But I could afford to buy a house even in San Diego back in 1995, I think I made $25,000 a year that year.
Mhm.
Today, even today, making
Can't even
50
get
to
a
60, you can't.
studio apartment.
No, because the price of homes and
Right.
wages didn't go together. They both increased, but not correlated. So I think you've got those stressors too, and that does impact people's mental health.
Yeah. I think one of the things that stood out is this idea of your physical health and your mental health. And I was just thinking, my older son is going to be a senior in high school, and he goes to a very small school, and they made the breaks in between classes longer. And they've put out like ping pong tables and spike ball. It's become like a spike ball championship
Yeah, I like
school.
that. That's good though. That's
But
excellent.
yeah, and so when you go onto campus, like if he forgets his lunch and I'm on campus dropping it off, I'm seeing all these kids like playing spike ball, playing a quick game of ping pong, just like
Yeah,
burning some energy like in
yeah.
between classes. It's really improved.
Oh,
It's
I'm
improved
sure.
everything on
Yeah,
campus. It's just giving them a
yeah.
little time to decompress before they're on to the next thing.
We need that because I
Yeah.
think sometimes we think, oh, I just have to line my day up with nonstop
Oh yeah.
productivity. And in actuality, there's diminishing returns on that for the effectiveness and quality of your work without breaks. And you do need to take those breaks. Maybe for some people, that's alone time.
Yeah.
And some people, it's social time and they can figure it out. But if you offer alternatives, like you mentioned your son's school, I think that's a great idea for mental health.
Yeah. We don't think about just sometimes it can be simple things, spaces for people to decompress, others to talk to, and connections are so important
They
to
are. They
yeah.
are. Plus, it teaches you social skills. Even as young adults, we need to improve those and move on through life.
And I know that you do a lot to support your faculty and staff for helping take care of their own mental health because they're helping students constantly. So
They
how
are.
can our colleges make sure that the people teaching
Yeah.
are also well taken care of?
It's a good point because I'm actually married to a licensed marriage family therapist as well. And one of the things I see when he comes home from maybe 3 or 4 or 5 appointments in a day is it's draining for the
Yeah.
therapist and psychologist. And same thing here at Alliant for our faculty, especially. And that can be very draining, even when you teach it. One of the things that happens too, I think, when students do programs in mental health, they're cautioned against it, but they might tend to self-therapize sometimes as they're learning new methods, and they focus it inwards, and that can be very detrimental too to their mental health if not properly seen and moved through. So again, we're not perfect at it, but I think for us, one of the ways in my role as CEO I can help mental health is to be very transparent with information, and that's my promise to our faculty and staff has been for 10 years. Is that if you ask me a question, I'm going to give you the answer. It's not going to be a political answer either. I always tell them there's a couple things off limits. That is personal information. I'm not going to tell you something about somebody else.
Right.
I'm also not going to give you a rumor. And number two is any legally protected information that I can't give you. But otherwise, everything else is fine. Ask away, and I'll tell you the answer. The reason I think that helps with mental health is, especially in today's higher education environment, colleges are under a lot of financial stress. You see every day about layoffs or closures or mergers happening. And higher ed is going through a lot of change this year specifically. And I think the best thing you can do for mental health as a leader is tell them everything you know. When I do a board of trustees presentation, with the exception of a couple slides about protected information that's just legally not appropriate to share with everybody, I use the same slides for our staff and faculty. I don't really change them out or water it down. And one of the things I've learned as a leader from mental health is that people should know everything because they got to be a part of the solution. I remember I talked to a leader one time and he said, "Oh, I don't tell them anything bad because they'll leave or they'll get scared." And I'm thinking, actually, people are pretty smart. They figure out that something's going on. They're intuitive. They're going to talk to each other. They're going to figure it out. And something to keep in mind for mental health or employees is the monster someone creates when you don't give them all the information is bigger and stronger than the monster that actually exists. So for example, you might have a $1 million deficit you're trying to cure. But if you keep it a secret, people see budget cuts and no paper clips for you and travel expenses have been reduced and you go, "Oh God, we're going to close." Well, no, it's just maybe $1 million deficit we got to cure. Just tell them, make them part of the solution because their monster is a $30 million deficit. And really, maybe the monster is only 5'2" versus 6'7". Tell them, define the monster so you can slay it together. I think that's my role as a leader for mental health improvement at work, at least.
I love that analogy so much of the monster because you're right. When people lack information, they tend to fill it with
Oh,
whatever whatever
yeah.
monster there may be in
Oh,
their head, right? We all
I've
do
heard
it.
every conspiracy theory you can ever think of, and I just go, "You what?"
Yeah.
One of the things I think most CEOs would tell you this: the longer you've been a CEO, the less you believe in conspiracy theories because you go, "What?" Let me tell you what's really going on
Yeah.
because that's not happening. So
Right. We
you
tend
just tell
to
them
jump
everything.
to the worst case
Oh,
scenario sometimes
humans are
too.
funny. We do. We
Yeah.
jump to the worst case possible scenario.
Right.
I think that's I think that's a protectionism
Mhm.
aspect of our life, and we just go, they could be awful, so let me take it all the way out. And you go, yeah, that's not really happening. It's okay. It's all right.
Well, I love this discussion around how we help students, how we help faculty, how we help staff. And we're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsor. And then when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about some of the new contributions that Alliant is making in the mental health profession.
Sounds good.
How do higher education decision makers find the right solution when technology evolves at light speed? Well, we usually start with our network. EdTech Connect is the network that's democratizing the higher ed technology conversation. EdTech Connect is free, so anyone with a .edu email address can sign up and list the software and services they use in their role at their school. Once you're in, you can find out what solutions similar schools are doing all over the country. Whether you're looking to find the hot new AI tool, or maybe learn options you have to upgrade your campus search engine, or even get to your short list of marketing solution vendors, EdTech Connect is the place to go. So visit edtechconnect.com and set up your free profile to get a pulse for what's happening with higher ed technology today.
All right, Andy. Well, thank you so much. Before the break, we talked a little bit about ensuring how faculty and staff can take care of their own mental health and how leaders can really play a role in creating stress-free environment. And I know that Alliant has geared up to really train the next generation of mental health professionals. So tell us a little bit about your community clinics and your new telehealth program and how that's going.
Sure. So we have in California what's called the Alliant Clinics. We have a couple of physical locations in San Diego and LA counties, and we also have a new telehealth mental health facility staffed by our own senior level students, but also supervised by our licensed clinical psychology faculty. And what we do is a sliding scale, and many times it's free. So our contribution back to the communities we serve all over California is mental health that's affordable, even if it's sometimes free for many, so that everyone has access to mental health. And let's face it, we all need that at some point in our life, every one of us.
Yeah.
And fortunately in the US, I think the stigma is fading. It's not where it needs to be. It's much better than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. We still have a long way to go, but it's much better. And part of our mission is to make sure we're accessible, that mental health is accessible, mental health is accessible. And I think for us, we give back to our communities in many ways, but that's one thing that we have a strength that we think we should do. It also enables our students to learn while they're doing an externship, an internship, and practicum hours in the role. They are supervised by our licensed clinical psychology faculty as well as they do this. But the Alliant Clinics is something we do to give back to our communities in California.
How do people find out or use this service?
Well, actually, they have a separate website versus
Okay.
Alliant site, and it's called alliantclinics.org.
Okay.
And on there, you can see in San Diego and LA where physically you go. And if you're in California, you can tap into our Sacramento-based mental telehealth center, and all the instructions are on there. That's really easy to do on the website. We encourage everyone to take a look at it.
That's great. What a fantastic resource. Because you're right. I mean, especially I'm thinking of a lot of our listeners for this podcast are community college or college presidents. And I know that a lot of colleges do have nurses on campus, but there's not always mental health support.
Not
So this
usually,
would be a
no.
great resource for students if they needed to talk to someone or, yeah, fantastic.
Something else to consider too, if you're not in California, because we're licensed in California to do those services on a sliding scale, is every school has probably another school somewhere within an hour's drive that does mental health licensure programs. Contact that school. If you're a president or a leader of another school, a lot of schools have these 800 numbers you can call, which are great. I think they're a great service. But maybe if you want something more in person, contact schools in your cities. And most medium and large size cities have a mental health practitioner school, and ask them, hey, do you have students that are supervised by licensed psychologists and licensed therapists and counselors that we could tap into? I think it'd be a great idea for most schools to look into that.
Oh, yeah, I think it's fantastic. It's a win-win. I'm assuming that the students who are doing this work need hours, right?
They do.
Yeah.
Hundreds
And
of hours. Yeah.
yeah, I know. I met
Yeah.
somebody at my gym who's going through it right now. And I was like shocked when I learned how much time she has to commit
Yeah.
to the program.
It's a lot. Even
Wow.
postgraduate, for most mental health graduate licensure programs, you have several hundred more hours of supervised work to do before you get your independent license to practice. It's a lot of hours, but I think schools can take full advantage of that for their own populations.
Now, one other thing I wanted to talk to you about before we wrap up our discussion is you are on the forefront of new programs, of building the university, of opening new areas. And we had talked about you launching a new program in Phoenix and thinking that when you launch a new program, you would just have people like lined up at the door, and you had a little bit of of a problem
Yeah.
filling your first cohort. Tell me what happened there and what ultimately made it successful.
Yeah, this gets back to the transparency comment. We tell our teams the same thing. When something doesn't work as well as we thought, let's just talk about it so we can solve it together. So Alliant's been around for over 100 years. We have been the leader in mental health for the last 55, 56 years. We've launched, we relaunched our K-12 teacher training. We train about 1,500 new K-12 teachers in the state of California every year. That's a great program, growing program too. A big demand for teachers in California and really across the country. And we just thought, hey, let's get into physical health. It matches our mission. Licensure programs are our thing. So nursing, we launched in Phoenix about 2 years ago. We thought we'll just put our name out in a new city. We've been around 100 years. Of course this will work. Well, it worked, but they weren't lining up at the door right away. First of all, I think the market told us, you're new at nursing and we don't know who you are. You've never been in Arizona before. So the Arizonans kind of went, never heard of you. And so we thought, okay, well, we finally got to a point where we called a timeout and said, hey, let's redo the branding and the marketing approach. And what really made the difference for us in building nursing in Phoenix was partnership development with hospitals and other healthcare professionals. That's what finally made the difference. I think in today's higher ed marketing, you're seeing less, especially at the graduate level and licensure program level, you're seeing less pure marketing, especially when you're new to a market or new program that you've never done before, and more into building your brand with those that are in the same sector you're teaching. That goes a lot further. And that was, look, we've been doing mental health and K-12 teacher training for decades. So it'd been a long time since we launched something new like that. And it was a learning curve. And I think that's okay to admit, because we thought, okay, we got to call a timeout. We actually did a full 2-day retreat with everybody on campus saying, okay, we got to figure this out because this didn't launch quite right, but we got it right finally. Now we're building really healthy cohorts in Phoenix for nursing. We'll end up with a few hundred nursing students in Phoenix. Matter of fact, they're starting school here in about a week. And things are going well now, but I think it's good for a leader to say, hey, we didn't do this quite right. Let's call a timeout, re-strategize, refocus. But again, to my point earlier, involve everybody. We've involved our part-time receptionists at the front desk. That's how much we wanted to get information about. What are you hearing? What are you feeling? How do we make this better? And now it's fine.
And what's great about that with the receptionist is sometimes they have the most information.
Oh, she did.
They're
actually.
answering all the questions.
Yes. Oh, she even said, well, have you thought about saying this? And I noticed on the sign over here, it does this. Have you just changed this? And she was right.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I'm so happy to hear you didn't just be like, this isn't working, we're going to quit.
No, no. We doubled down
back
and finally got it right. Yeah, so that was good. But I think, look, I think being vulnerable as a leader is all right. I think you just have to say, hey, I don't have all the answers. We're not in these positions to have all the answers. We're in it to make the best decisions after gathering input from everybody and shared governance.
Well, speaking of being vulnerable, one of my career goals when I first started out in higher education was to one day maybe be a college president. So I just was enamored. Well, then I became a chief of staff to my college president and decided I do not want to be a college president.
It's not for everybody. It is not for everybody. My spouse will oftentimes, at the end of a workday, see me or hear about my day and go, I could never do that. I would never want to do that.
And I see it here in California with the longevity of presidents. I mean, you're
getting shorter and shorter.
Yeah. So what is your advice to new presidents to maintain a healthy relationship with work and keep their mental health in a healthy spot? Like what as a 10-year president, what is your advice?
I think you need to set boundaries. It's tough to do because this job is very demanding. I mean, it can be 24/7 if you let it. And we had international campuses when I first took this job too, in Asia and Mexico. And so the time zone difference, especially in Japan and Hong Kong, I'd wake up and there'd be messages about a crisis going on in Japan overnight. And so you just have to empower your staff to make decisions without you always being involved. And I think sometimes leaders need to be involved in everything. And I think you got to set boundaries. You have to empower. You have to codify things. And again, getting back to the values, your job as a leader is to create the infrastructure so you're not always needed, that people have the tools and the ability to filter their decisions through an agreed upon matrix of decision making. Because if you have to make every decision, you're going to burn out. You're not going to last in the job. You're going to be fried. You're going to want to leave. And this is what's happening today. There's a big turnover in the presidential roles at colleges for this reason. Your job is to spend a lot of time on the front end creating the framework, decision-making matrix, and the values on how we make decisions, how we treat one another, how we behave at work, and make sure everyone follows that. Then empower them to make those decisions. Therefore, a lot of times I'll get a meeting invite. Presidents get invites to so many meetings, and most of them we don't need to be in. We really don't. Because if you empower your people and you trust them and you hire the right people and you hire for talent and not just skills. Skills are important, so are credentials, but personality and values alignment and how work ethic, all those things. Hire the right people and trust them to make the right decisions. If the wrong decision is made, most of them aren't going to end in someone dying. So you have time to correct. But the majority of the time, they make very good decisions. And you let them do that. Let them fail sometimes. That's okay. And I think a lot of presidents say, oh gosh, we have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. You have to be excellent, not perfect. And I think that helps a lot in longevity.
I love that idea, the difference between excellence and perfection.
Yeah.
That is a great, great idea.
We can't
Well,
be perfect. I think some people want to be, but you're going to set yourself up for failure if that's your goal.
exactly. And I mean, talking about mental health, that's not a great place to be in if you're
It is
always
not.
striving to be perfect.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I've loved our conversation.
Same here.
And you are just a complete inspiration, and what's happening at Alliant is fantastic. It's been really interesting to learn more about the university and what you're doing. And do you have any goals for the next 10 years? Anything that the college is looking forward to accomplishing?
Yeah, so we are further launching more physical health programs. We've got occupational therapy launching in San Diego in January at our San Diego campus. We're looking at some other programs, maybe speech language pathology is one. We just find that if you look at those types of programs, what we do already in mental health licensure programs and K-12 teacher training licensure programs, that even though the people are have different career goals, it's the same person from the heart. And so it matches our mission. What I mean by that is people that want to be teachers or nurses or occupational therapists or mental health care licensed workers have that same desire to help others. And so what's great for us is when we look at a program, we're never going to launch engineering. And I'm not saying engineers are bad people. They're not. They're good people. But for us, it has to be a fit. And for us, that fit means, does it match our mission, heart first, giving back to our communities? And that's the kind of students we attract. So programs for us over the next 10 years will fit in that alignment somehow.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you, Andy. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been a real pleasure getting to know you. And if people want to find out more about Alliant or connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So alliant.edu is our URL. My email is right on there. If you want to send a message, just click on my name and I will respond to every email I get.
Wonderful. Well, great. Well, thank you so much again.
Thank you. It's been great.